Hi there folks, Dave from Bury Hill, one of the bailiffs here. I look after all the pleasure anglers that come along and try and give them tips. And one of the tips I like to give them is obviously on baits, different baits, a maggot related bait called a caster. Caster is a really excellent bait, mainly for coarse fish, chub, roach, dace, mainly things like that. Some carp like them. It's a chrysalis of the main humble maggot, and it goes into a shell-like format and is a really excellent quality bait for better fish. It's quite renowned that allegedly better fish will take a caster as opposed to a maggot, particularly roach. And if you want to catch a big roach in particular, the caster or chrysalis is the bait to have. Okay, what we have here, just a brief selection of the caster, chrysalis, whatever you like to call it. This is in a stage where it's turning into a fly. So when they crystallise like this from a normal maggot, it's quite important to keep them in water or keep the air seal from them. Needs a bit of looking after you've bought it. It's not really worth turning your own. It's a long-winded process, time consuming. Your good local tackle shop will sell you casters already done. And as you can see from the selection in front of me, they start to turn colour and change as they progress in their life cycle. Initially they're white, then they go to a lightish brown, and then a dark sort of brown, and then a really dark, well, crispy colour. You don't really want them like this because what's happening inside, instead of a mushy bit of maggot, they got a fly type presence inside the shell, and obviously that will mean it's lighter and they float. So, and then if you're using them on the bank, they take a bit of looking after. You've actually got to put them in water. As they are now, they'll all sink, put them in water and keep the air sealed from them, because that way they won't turn into a lighter maggot or caster and then float. Casters, very nice bait. Roach in particular, love a caster. Now they're crafty fish, roach. They need to sometimes be hooked very carefully and craftily to outwit these crafty fish. The first way, when the fish are feeding confidently, is just to nick the end, hook one on, pick a nice dark one that's nice and crispy, and just get the hook on there like you would a maggot. And that's the way when the fish are feeding confidently. You loose feeding these, sometimes with a bit of hemp. A double caster on a sensible size hook, not too big, will outwit most fish. And if they're feeding, as I said, really well, you can get away with that. But if they're a bit wily, and some roach are very wily, very crafty, and they're in a less confident feeding mood, you then have to get the caster and outwit them by burying the caster in the hook. So you gently thread it on, thread it round the hook, if you can see that, carefully put it whole of the hook inside the caster. That way the wily roach won't see the hook, won't see the thin line you're using.
Jesus Christ. Sorry about this, folks.
Did I do that for you?
We might as well film it, but the robber's about to go. Oh, you can film it if you want, Dave. Yeah, Dave always does something when he turns up here. I don't get spooled first. Well, I'm on a float, and it just literally was hanging in the water there by the side. Whether we get the fish is another thing. Obviously a carp. And that's the reason I had the drag loose. But we were filming away, so you got it all live there, folks. I'd love to be able to say, when Dave was doing the talk about casters, this hooked on a caster. But it's not. It was just a bunch of maggots that was laying underneath the rod top as we were filming. And obviously I'm on my knees playing it, praying that my wife doesn't want me to come home for tea. Now Dave, while we're doing this, you could just confirm, I think this is one of the best baits at casters for chub, isn't it, in the river?
Yes, that's right. We were talking about casters just now before we had this rude interruption from this carp. Casters and hemp sort of go together, and as Graeme quite rightly says, casters, hemp, chub, roach, probably some bream like them, but as he quite rightly says, there's key species which really enjoy and appreciate a quality caster are the chub and the roach.
And you get these carp going on them too, wouldn't you?
Well, that's right. Carp are often greedy fish, and you start loose feeding casters as you would maggots, and these chaps come along and they just love anything. They'll mop anything up. But for a bit more sort of, you know, specialist fishing, and you want a nice chub, a nice 2-pound roach or whatever, the cast is the bait. Cannot go wrong. And as we sort of tried to show you earlier, presentation and care of the bait is very important. You know, you can't just buy a bag of casters. You've got to keep them cold, keep them sealed, look after them on the bank, keep them out of the sun. And obviously, better bait, better fishing, better fish. And it's worth looking after your bait. The biggest thing people don't do is look after their bait properly. And
would they leave them in the sun like I've done?
Yeah. Well, Graeme is unfortunately not, you know, a good example. I've told him a dozen times he's not taken a blind bit of notice, no. And he's just kept them in the sun. They've gone dark, a bit smelly. But obviously at times fish don't mind. But if you're after a quality, crafty fish, particularly the roach, which I emphasise they like, you've got more chance with better bait. I've been in a tackle shop nearly all my life, and I've spent many a happy hour on a Saturday night riddling casters for the matchman the next day. Personally, I wouldn't use them frozen. It's a psychological thing. As an ex-match angler or current match angler, you know, they're not good, and in my head I think it's not right.
Would I be right in saying, Dave, that a frozen one will float if you don't thaw them out? The ice in them?
Yes, it would, that's right. And I prefer to buy and use the bait as I fish. And if I've got a bit left over, the birds benefit, the robins and the geese, and they have a little feast. And buy fresh bait again. Then you see, the other benefit is when you throw them in and they're on the bottom of the lake or the river, they don't bury in like a maggot would into the silt, they lay on the top. And so obviously any cruising fish that are about, I'll just talk about this while Graeme's still playing this carp. Poor old boy. He's getting a bit tired, it'll be time to go home. Yeah. And they tug back a bit too much, Graeme. We'll get you some small roach in a minute, that'd be better.
On a match rod,
yeah.
And I was fishing for the run.
That's right. But you see, yeah, again, just looking at what Graeme's doing now, we've got balanced tackle, you know, light line, light float rod, bends. You get so much fun out of a smallish hook, a light rod, light line. You can't drag them in straight away, but the pleasure of catching them is in the playing of them. And this one took us by surprise, but you know, Graeme's pleased to be doing it. It's great fun. Heavy tackle is not really always advisable. You've got to balance it, as I just said.
Well, I might not have got the actual take if I. Yeah. Know, he's obviously coming feeding on what we've thrown in the water to pack up.
Well, that one was caught in the margins, and another good tip, you know, in the evenings, fish creep into the margins. They feel safe. People throw their old bait in before they go home, and it's a good typical evening stance where you fish down the edge and get these big fish creeping in.
Have you put batteries in this one, Dave?
Yeah. Well.
I'm trying to bully him.
Go on then, Graeme, just cut the line and we'll go home. I'm ready for a pint down the local pub. Here. You know, it'll be dark soon, so you'll have to hurry up, please. You know. And playing it as Graeme is, you got to...
Brutally.
Yeah, you got to keep your head, be patient. If the fish wants to go, give him a bit of line. You let the clutch take a bit of line off, and then he'll tire eventually. Get him on the top about midnight tonight, and then we can all go home. Is the net big enough, Graeme, for that one?
Yeah, I think it's a fish. It's just it's got this branch around him as well.
Oh, right, oh well.
I should say I probably might lose him.
It's good of you to clear the bottom of all the debris. We appreciate that.
Bit of
we won't have to do that ourselves later on. If we get this chap out, we can show him to the camera. That's it. You better have a little lie down now, Graeme. I think that's it. But smashing fish. Yeah.
Dear God.
Unhooking mat is an absolute must.
Look what I've got.
And you know, it's part of a rule on many fisheries. Take your landing net with the fish into the unhooking mat.
Look at all the other rubbish I've got.
And all the twigs and everything else that comes with it. Sorry about this, folks, but
that's just how it happens in fishing, look.
Well, that's right. Yeah, it's all a genuine situation.
As well.
Yeah, that's obviously picked up that on the bottom.
Yeah.
And it's got sort of bogged down there. Just have to move the tripod and find the fish. Hooks lovely out. Fighting little common there. Good quality. Good weight, that Graeme. Fat little chap, good scale pattern. He's putting on a fair bit of weight. He might be in a spawning mode soon.
Yeah.
And healthy and fighting well.
I think I will be after all that.
Yeah.
Can we please finish this caster fill?
Right, Graeme. Put him back and we must go home.
Graeme, you've tired me out playing that carp. I feel as tired as you nearly, but a masterful performance, so you got him in. That's the main thing. Well done. And I'm afraid it interrupted our caster talk, but I'll just go through that again quickly. As I said, different colours, but when you want to put a nice caster on the hook and the fish are very wary, very crafty, the best way is to find a dark coloured one that tends to be quite crispy,
and that would mean the hook will pull through the shell more easily. And when these fish are elusive and biting shyly, you actually need, if you can see that folks, you need to bury the caster in the hook. So you go in at one end, turn it gently, push it up to the end of the thing, and there you can see, just get my fingers out of the way, he's craftily buried the whole hook, and that will normally outwit any crafty roach or chub that's fussy about the way they feed. And they don't see the hook, the line's usually high-tech fluorocarbon, they can't see that either, and they will take that more confidently. Condition of the bait is very, very important. Firstly, when you buy the casters, the reputable tackle dealer that sells them will make sure they come in a sealed bag, and that way there's no air in the bag, no life cycle would continue because you're stopping it by excluding the air from it, and you've got to have a grip seal bag where you make sure it's sealed, double sealed, no air whatsoever. So that's how you buy them, take them home that night, put them in the fridge next to the Sunday joint, take them fishing the Sunday morning. Transportation wise, get them on the bank like it's a warm sunny evening like we are, put them in water or keep them sealed in the bag. But one totally awesome tip which I've made pay many times in catching crafty fish, when I start fishing I'll get a few of these chaps, put them out on a bait box lid, on a bait table, on your platform, let them go all nice and crispy, brownish, and it makes them more brittle, more, as I said earlier, the hook will now penetrate and pull through the caster much more quickly, and you can put those on, they come off very easily, and the fish will sort of take them in more confidently. Put the darker coloured ones on, the hook will pull through more easily, enable you to hook the fish on the strike. Also, another awesome tip is, because they're lighter, there's not quite so much maggot content in the shell, therefore the fall through the water will be a lot slower. And a roach feed up in the water, they will intercept a slow moving bait. So these hook baits only, because your feed ones are in water, in your box, you know, away from the heat. These lighter, well, darker coloured ones rather, that are crispy will drop slowly through the water and attract up in the water fish, and you know, less shot down the line, you'll get a slower drop and more bites on a hot day.